When I found out my fiancé, Elliot, had let his female student move into his campus apartment, I didn't scream. I didn't demand answers, nor did I throw a glass vase against the wall like I would have months ago. Instead, I quietly deleted his number, blocked him on every app, and accepted my company's transfer to their Zurich office. We met again 5 years later at an industry symposium. I was there as a venture capital partner representing one of the leading research labs. People I hadn't seen in years flocked to my table the moment they recognized me. Daphne, my God, Elliot has been looking for you everywhere. He's been like a ghost these past 5 years, completely lost without you. I frowned slightly, looking up just in time to see Elliot walk through the double doors, flanked by a small crowd of colleagues. 5 years had elevated his academic standing, but it had carved deep lines between his brows. He looked hollowed out, the sharp, vibrant edge he once carried replaced by a dull, gray exhaustion. Everyone in our circle knew about our history, and the legendary depth of his regret. Intending to be helpful, they orchestrated the seating chart, so we were placed right next to each other at the banquet. I treated him like a stranger, but the look in his eyes was a storm of raw, unshed grief. After what felt like an eternity, he whispered my name. Daphne, how have you been? Good, I replied, my voice level. I've been really good. 1. I kept my tone clipped and polite, the way you speak to a stranger you bump into on the subway. But beneath the surface, my chest was tight. Elliot and I had been childhood sweethearts. We grew up on the same tree-lined street, went to the same schools, and slid into a relationship as naturally as breathing. An engagement soon followed. But after the ring was on my finger, our careers pulled us apart. He was climbing the tenure track. I was putting in 80-hour weeks at my firm. I thought the distance was just a temporary tax we paid for our future. Until he started talking about summer. Elliot had always been fiercely private. He insisted we keep our relationship out of his professional life. No visits to his office, no public displays of affection. Yet he let Summer loop her arm through his on campus. He let her tease him in front of his colleagues. At first I brushed it off. He was her advisor, she was a brilliant, struggling student. But then came our 5-year anniversary. He left me sitting alone at a candlelit table to rush to campus, because Summer was having an emotional crisis. I lost my mind. I told him we were done. But Elliot, proud, stoic Elliot, dropped to his knees on our living room rug, tears streaming down his face as he begged me not to leave. Daphne, please. There is nothing between us. She's an orphan. She has no family, no one to look out for her. I'm just trying to keep her afloat. Please believe me. Don't end this. I looked at him, and all I could see was the boy who used to share his lunch with me on the school bus. I softened. I forgave him. And then, I forgave him again and again, accepting his excuses every time he bailed on me because Summer needed him. Until the day I came home early from a business trip. I wanted to surprise him at his university apartment. I didn't even go back to our place first. I dragged my suitcase straight to campus, exhausted but excited. I unlocked the door, and the air left my lungs. The apartment, which had always been a sterile expanse of gray and black, was filled with warmth. Fairy lights, plush pillows, cozy throws. And Elliot, who used to snap if I even rearranged his bookshelves, was holding a stuffed animal, asking Summer with a soft, teasing smile where she wanted him to put it. I stood frozen. When my brain finally forced my legs to move, I stepped back out into the hallway. Why is your student living in your apartment, Elliot? He shrugged, completely blind to the boundary he had crossed. Summer's tuition is high, and her part-time job barely covers groceries. I rarely sleep here anyway. What's the big deal? A big deal? We were the ones paying her tuition. Ever since Elliot took her on, we had been quietly sponsoring her expenses out of our joint account. And as for him rarely sleeping there, that was only true when I was in town. Whenever I traveled, that apartment was where he stayed. A male professor and his young female student, sharing an apartment. I wanted to scream, to ask him if he had lost his mind, but when I opened my mouth, the only words that came out were, never mind. 2. What was the point of arguing? The truth was written in the cozy pastel decor of that apartment. From the moment Summer entered his life, I had been demoted. The man who had sworn under the summer stars to love me forever, to never let me feel second best, had given all his tenderness to someone else. My birthdays, our anniversaries, none of it mattered. One frantic phone call from Summer, and he would vanish. I had fought, I had cried, but every single time, Elliot would offer an apology so sincere, so desperate, that I would fold. He loved me, he'd say. She was just a student. He just felt sorry for her. But standing there, watching her live in the space I was kept out of, watching her rearrange the things I wasn't allowed to touch, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I forced a polite smile, turned on my heel, and practically ran. At the campus gate, the security guard stopped me to sign the visitor log. As I took the pen, a dull ache bloomed in my chest. We had been engaged for 3 years, and yet, to visit my fiancé's office, I still had to sign in as a stranger. How had I been so blind? I went back to my office with a cold weight in my chest. On my computer screen, the draft of my email declining the overseas transfer was still open. I had spent hours writing a detailed explanation about family obligations and my upcoming wedding. With a bitter laugh, I hit select all, deleted it, and typed a single sentence. I accept the transfer. But while the decision took seconds, untangling a life takes time. While the firm handled my visa, I had to personally close out my life in the city. The hardest part was our shared bank account. I took a morning off to go to the bank, planning to withdraw my half of our savings and close the account. But the teller's voice shattered my quiet resolve. "I'm sorry, Miss Chapman," she said, looking up from her monitor. "There's no balance in this account." I stared at her. We had opened that account when we got engaged, agreeing to deposit a set amount every month for our future house. After 3 years, it should have been at least $80,000. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Could you check where the funds went?" The teller's expression softened into pity. The bulk of the funds was transferred last month into a new joint account under Mr. Elliot's name and a co-owner. She couldn't legally give me the co-owner's name, but I didn't need her to. I walked out into the chilly autumn air and called a friend who worked in credit services. 10 minutes later, a PDF file landed in my inbox. Elliot had opened a joint account with Summer 2 years ago, and last month he had emptied our nest egg to fund it. I stood on the bustling sidewalk, the city noise fading into a ringing silence. 3. I floated back to our apartment like a ghost. But as I slid my key into the lock, a voice from inside stopped me cold. "Elliot, are you sure Daphne won't be angry? Me staying here, I mean." It was Summer. Elliot's voice was gentle, a tone he used to reserve only for me. "She won't mind. Daphne is understanding. She'll take good care of you while I'm away." My hand shook as I turned the key. I walked in to find them sitting close on our beige sofa. Elliot looked up, his expression entirely casual. "Hey, I have to go out of town for a conference this week. The locks on Summer's place are acting up, and I don't feel safe leaving her there alone. I brought her here to stay for a bit." He stood up, smoothing his jacket. "While I'm gone, do you mind letting her have the master bedroom? It has the private bath." "Thanks, honey." He said it so easily, as if he were asking me to water a plant. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my voice dangerously quiet. "Elliot, do you even remember whose home this is?" He didn't even look at me, a sigh of annoyance escaping his lips. "Daphne, please don't start." Summer shrank back, her eyes wide and watery. "Elliot, I think I'm making Daphne uncomfortable. I should just go." Finally, Elliot looked at me, but there was no warmth in his eyes, only frustration. "Daphne, you're an adult. You're older than her. Why are you picking a fight with a kid?" "A kid?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "She's 22, Elliot. Since when is a college senior a kid?" Elliot's face hardened. He stepped in front of Summer, shielding her. "What is your problem lately?" "My problem?" I stepped closer. "Do you think the rest of the faculty is blind, Elliot? Do you think people aren't talking about the two of you?" Summer's gaze flickered. Behind his shoulder, her lips twitched into a tiny, victorious smirk. Elliot scowled. "Those are just rumors. Summer is my student, nothing more." The dam broke. 5 years of swallowed pride and quiet, lonely nights rushed to the surface. A normal student-teacher relationship? Tell me, Elliot, what kind of professor lets his student move into his campus apartment? What kind of man leaves his fiancé on her birthday because his student called with a minor inconvenience? Elliot's face went white, then a dark, angry red. "Daphne, enough. I have explained this 1,000 times. Do you have to act like a hysterical child over nothing?" Summer whimpered behind him, playing the peacemaker. "Please don't fight because of me. Daphne hates having me here. I'll just go back to the campus apartment. I'll manage." She didn't move an inch. She just stared at Elliot with puppy dog eyes. I had reached my limit. I walked over, grabbed Summer's wrist, and pulled her toward the door. "Great. Let's go. I'll drive you back myself." Summer stumbled, feigning resistance, and then with a sharp twist, she threw her weight sideways. We both crashed hard onto the hardwood floor. "Summer." Elliot panicked, rushing past me as if I weren't even there. He gathered her into his arms, his voice laced with terror. "Are you okay? Did you hurt your hand?" Summer leaned into his chest, shaking her head. "I'm okay, check on Daphne. She fell harder." Elliot looked up at me, his eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. Before I could process the look on his face, his hand swung out. Slap. The sound echoed in the quiet living room. My cheeks stung, hot and throbbing. "How could you be so vicious?" he snarled. "Jealousy is one thing, Daphne, but physically attacking a girl? If she injured her wrist, do you have any idea what that would do to her lab work? Her career?" I sat on the floor, hand pressed to my burning cheek, staring at the man I had loved for half my life. He didn't even ask if I was hurt. He didn't see the tears in my eyes. He only saw his precious student. The pain in my chest was so immense it surpassed the sting on my face. Elliot, I said, my voice barely a whisper as I used the wall to pull myself up. We're done. Get out. He flinched, a flicker of regret passing through his eyes, but it was quickly swallowed by pride. Daphne, grow up. Stop using threats every time you don't get your way. He picked up Summer's bags, then helped her to her feet. Fine. If you're going to be like this, I'll take her with me to the conference. You need to cool down. We'll deal with this when I get back. Deal with this when I get back. I kept my head down, letting my hair fall forward to hide my face. There would be nothing to deal with, Elliot, because by the time you get back, I will be gone. 5 days later, Elliot returned. He was still irritated, rehearsing the speech he would give me about boundaries and maturity. But despite his lingering anger, he had stopped at the airport duty-free to buy me a perfume I liked. He took a deep breath at the front door, unlocked it, and set the gift bag on the entryway table. Daphne, he called out, his voice echoing in the hallway. Look, I'm sorry about how things went before I left, but you have to stop acting so irrationally over nothing. Silence greeted him. He walked into the living room. It was completely empty. A cold, quiet dread began to settle in his stomach. The silence that settled over the maple trail was vast and cold, punctuated only by the dry, paper-like scraping of fallen leaves sliding across the concrete pathway in the autumn wind. Ethan stared at the printed sheets in my hand. The white pages of standard 20-pound bond paper looked clinical, almost blue. In the flat, gray light of the afternoon, his name, Ethan Charles Vance, was printed in neat, dark black ink at the top of the first page, right next to me. Avery, he said. His voice was no longer loud, but it had a hard rattling vibration that sounded like a motor starting to fail. This isn't funny. You're bringing legal documents to our old campus? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this would be if someone from my old department saw us? Beside him, Haley did not move. She remained seated on the wooden bench, her white silk dress pressed flat against my ruined sketchbook. Ethan, she murmured, her hand reaching up to touch his elbow, her voice carrying that familiar, fragile tremor. Maybe I should go back to the car. I don't want to get in the middle of a fight between you and Avery. But she didn't stand up. She sat there, her weight grinding the wet, coffee-soaked sheets of my past 8 years into the rough pine slats of the bench. Stay here, Haley, Ethan said, his eyes remaining locked on mine, his brow furrowing until the skin between his eyebrows looked like gray stone. Avery's just doing this to get a reaction. She's been passive-aggressive all day. It's because of the rest stop. I told you, I didn't mean to start driving before you were in. I am not throwing a tantrum, Ethan, I said. My voice was very quiet, almost lost beneath the wind through the maple trees. And I don't care about the rest. Stop anymore. I don't care about the Easy Pass bills. I don't even care about the sketchbook under Haley's dress. I took a step back, the movement sending a sharp, hot needle of pain up my torn knee. I didn't flinch. I brought the papers because I wanted to see if there was anything left of the man who spent 3 days in bed with a fever because he held my drawings under his coat, I said, pointing to the bench. But there isn't. The only thing left in this car is a chauffeur who doesn't like my voice. I set the papers down on the wet grass at his feet. The lawyer's office is on 3rd Avenue, I said. He has the digital copies of my bank statements from before the marriage. I'm not asking for the house on the east side. I'm not asking for your car. I just want my name back. I turned on my heel and walked away. Avery, Ethan yelled behind me. His leather shoes clicked rapidly on the asphalt as he took 3 quick steps to follow. But then he stopped. I heard Haley's voice, high, thin, and slightly breathless. Ethan, my hand is starting to blister. I think the coffee was hotter than I thought. The footsteps behind me ceased. I kept walking, my boots leaving small, dark circles of blood on the yellow leaves as I made my way toward the campus gate. The house on the east side was quiet when I returned. It was a 3-story townhome we had bought during our first year of marriage. The living room was large, with high windows that looked out over the river, and the floors were covered in thick, ivory wool rugs that Ethan had personally selected because he knew I liked to walk barefoot in the winter. Now the room felt as cold and sterile as a furniture gallery. I didn't pack everything. When you live with someone for 8 years, your lives become tangled like the roots of the maple trees on the campus trail. Your books are on their shelves. Your winter coats are hanging next to their suits. Your spare keys are on their ring. I only packed 1 suitcase. Inside went my clothes from before the marriage, the simple sweaters, the dark denim jeans, and the worn leather boots I had worn during our college years. I didn't touch the designer dresses Ethan had bought me for his company's winter galas, nor the diamond earrings that sat in the velvet-lined tray of my vanity. I went into the study. My work desk was in the corner, next to the window. I was a senior landscape designer for a local firm, a job I had nearly lost twice during the past year. Because I kept leaving early to cook Ethan's favorite meals or to drive Haley to the clinic when her anxiety flared up. On the desk sat a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside were dozens of yellow sticky notes, their edges curled and faded from time. Avery, honey, I left some soup in the fridge. Heat it up before you go to bed. Don't forget your umbrella today. It's going to rain at 3. I love you. I'll be waiting at the subway exit. They were all written in Ethan's neat, slightly slanted handwriting. I stared at the notes for a long time. The paper felt dry, almost fragile, like the autumn leaves outside. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the urge to tear them up or throw them into the fireplace. I simply closed the lid of the box, placed it in the center of the desk, and laid my wedding band on top of it. The ring was platinum, simple, with a tiny microscopic scratch near the inside, engraving where I had dropped it on the marble floor of our honeymoon suite. I picked up my suitcase, walked down the stairs, and closed the heavy oak door of the townhome behind me. The click of the latch was the only sound in the empty street. For the first month after I left, Ethan did not call. I rented a small, one-bedroom apartment in the industrial district of the city. It had high concrete ceilings, exposed brick walls, and a single tall window that looked out over a gravel yard where the local train line ran. It was noisy, smelly, and the air drafty, but it was mine. I spent my evenings sitting at my new desk, my fingers moving across my drawing tablet as I worked on a new landscape design proposal for the city's waterfront park. It was a $40 million municipal project, the largest contract my firm had ever bid on. If we won, my position as lead director would be secured for the next 5 years. At 10 p.m. on a Thursday, my phone finally buzzed. It was a text from Ethan's personal assistant, a young man named Clara whom he had hired last winter. Clara. Hi Avery, Mr. Vance asked me to check if you have the spare key to his safe deposit box. He's trying to access some old property deeds and can't find his copy. I stared at the screen, a faint, dry taste of copper returning to my tongue. Avery. I left the spare key in the wooden box on my desk, next to the ring. Clara. Oh, Mr. Vance said the desk was empty. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't reply. I knew why the desk was empty. Ethan had probably cleared the box and the ring away the first night he came home, throwing them into the bottom drawer of his dresser, so he wouldn't have to look at the reminders of his failure while he was hosting Haley's friends in the living room. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. This time, it was Ethan's direct number. I pressed the answer button. Avery. His voice came through the receiver, sounding thin and digitized, stripped of the warm, resonant timbre he usually used when he was in the car. Where is the key? Clara said you told her it was in the box, but I checked. There's nothing there. I left it there, Ethan. I said, my voice carrying the flat, level rhythm of a dry logistics report. If it's not there, perhaps Haley moved it when she was looking for a place to put her cat's medication. A long silence fell over the line. Why are you still being like this? He asked suddenly, his voice dropping into that quiet, dangerous register. The homecoming was 3 weeks ago. I've given you your space. I haven't commented on the fact that you're living in a drafty warehouse downtown. But the lawyers are sending me emails every day, Avery. They're talking about asset division. They're talking about a trial. There is no trial, Ethan, I said. I signed the relinquishment forms yesterday. You keep the East Side house. You keep the car. I only want the premarital savings. Why? He hissed, his grip on his phone sounding so tight I could hear the faint creak of his leather case. Why are you throwing away everything we built? For 8 years, Avery. We've been together for 8 years. You're going to let a cheap sketchbook and a few detours destroy our marriage. The sketchbook wasn't cheap, Ethan, I said softly. It was the only thing you saved from the rain. And the detours weren't just past her building. They were past my life. I hung up, put the phone on silent, and went back to my design. The municipal presentation for the waterfront park was held at the City Design Gallery in mid-November. The gallery was a large, high-ceilinged space with concrete pillars, white brick walls, and floor-to-ceiling glass windows that looked out over the Gray River. The room was crowded with city officials, local journalists, and representatives from the top design firms in the state. My firm's display was in the center of the hall. We had created a massive, three-dimensional model of the proposed park, complete with miniature maple trees, wooden benches, and a winding gravel trail that traced the edge of the water. Avery, this is spectacular, my director, a gray-haired woman named Eleanor, said, patting my shoulder. The city planner was just looking at the trail design. He loved the detail of the maple leaf paving stones. Thank you, Eleanor, I said, offering her a warm, genuine smile. I was wearing a simple, tailored black suit and a pair of dark leather boots. My hair was tied back in a neat, professional knot, and my skin looked bright, clear of the permanent gray exhaustion that had defined my final days in the East Side townhome. As I turned to adjust one of the model's miniature benches, a commotion at the entrance of the gallery caught my attention. 3 people walked in. First came Richard Smith, the senior partner of the city's largest engineering firm, and Ethan's primary corporate client. Beside him walked Ethan, dressed in a bespoke navy suit that fitted his broad shoulders perfectly, his hair styled back with his usual cool boy elegance. And on his arm was Haley. She was wearing a long, white wool coat that looked identical to the one she had worn on the homecoming trail, her fingers clutching a designer clutch that Ethan had probably bought her to apologize for the coffee spill. "Ethan," Richard Smith said, gesturing toward our display, "you should look at this. The landscape firm has some interesting ideas for the structural grading near the pier. It might affect our foundation design." Ethan walked over to the model. The moment his eyes scanned the winding trail, the miniature maple trees and the tiny wooden benches, his face went completely pale. His hand, which had been resting on Haley's waist, slowly dropped to his side. He looked up, his dark eyes locking onto mine across the model table. "Avery," he whispered. "Good evening, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice carrying that same quiet, professional calm that had always been my anchor. "Mr. Smith, welcome to the presentation." "Avery, you designed this?" Richard Smith asked, looking between me and the model in surprise. "I had no idea you were the lead director for Eleanor's firm. Ethan's always told me his wife was, well, that she preferred to stay at home and manage the household." Eleanor let out a soft, dry laugh. "Avery's been the backbone of our creative team for 5 years, Richard. We would have lost the Northern contract last winter if she hadn't stayed up for 3 days straight to finish the environmental grading." Ethan's jaw moved, but no sound came out. He stared at me, at the tailored black suit, the clean lines of my profile, the quiet, unyielding authority that had made every city official in the room listen to my design presentation. For 2 years, he had treated me like an idle housewife, an inconvenience who dragged him to college campuses to waste his time. He had believed that because I didn't scream, because I didn't make scenes when he drove past Haley's apartment, I was a quiet, passive creature who would always be waiting in the East Side house when he returned from his detours. Now he realized the truth. The woman who had massaged his temples when he was stressed, the one who had kept his lemon water ready every morning, had never been small. She had simply been holding his ladder, too busy keeping him from falling to climb her own mountain. "Avery, please," Ethan said, taking a step toward me, his voice dropping to a low, raw whisper that didn't carry to the rest of the crowd. "We need to talk. Just 5 minutes." "The presentation is about to begin, Mr. Vance," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "And I believe your client is waiting." The collapse of Ethan's company did not start with a lawsuit. It started with a simple, anonymous email sent to Richard Smith's corporate office. I sat in my small, sunlit apartment downtown, a cup of hot chamomile tea in my hand, reading the news on my drawing tablet. Vance Engineering dropped from municipal waterfront project due to financial discrepancies and conflict of interest. According to the article, an internal audit of Ethan's firm had revealed that over $300,000 of corporate design funds had been routed through a shell company registered under Haley's name. The funds, which had been billed to the city as preliminary survey costs, had actually been used to pay off Haley's personal credit cards and to secure the lease on her West Side apartment. Even worse, the GPS logs and E-ZPass records I had taped to the fridge had been subpoenaed by the city's ethics board to prove that Ethan had been using company vehicles for non-business detours to Haley's building while billing the mileage to the municipal account. A quiet knock sounded on my door. I didn't stand up immediately. I set my cup down, walked over to the entryway, and opened the door. It was Ethan. He wasn't wearing his bespoke navy suit or his expensive leather shoes. He was wearing a simple, dark green sweater that looked loose and wrinkled on his shrunken frame, his hair unwashed, his face gray and hollowed out by 2 weeks of sleeplessness. "Avery," he said, his voice a dry, rattling whisper. "Hello, Ethan," I said, keeping my hand on the edge of the door. She lied to me," he whispered, his eyes wide, wild with a sudden, suffocating panic. "The cat, the asthmatic cat. She didn't even have a cat. Avery. She'd rented it from a local animal shelter for 2 days just to have an excuse to call me over when you were at work." He took a step closer, his hands reaching out toward me, his fingers trembling. "And the cut finger? The one at the rest stop? It was a fake blood capsule she'd bought from a theater shop downtown. She'd been planning the whole thing, Avery. She knew we were going to the campus. She wanted to make sure I'd leave you at the rest stop so she could see how much power she had over me." I looked at his wet, pale face. I saw the 8 years we had spent together. I saw the night he had knelt in the snow to propose to me. I saw the empty townhome on the east side, the scent of her perfume in his car, and the sketchbook turning to mush on the wet wooden bench. I know, Ethan, I said softly. You knew? I knew Haley was manipulative, I said. But that's not why I left you, Ethan. I left you because you chose to believe her. You chose to start driving at the rest stop. You chose to use my sketchbook as a seat cover. You chose her lies. Because they made you feel like a hero, while my reality made you feel like a husband. I slowly began to close the door. Avery, please. Ethan cried, his hand slamming against the wood to stop me. I'll sign the papers. I'll give you the East Side house. I'll sell the car. Just don't leave me alone in this room. It smells like her perfume, Avery. I've scrubbed the walls with lemon water 5 times, but I can't get the smell out. The smell isn't on the walls, Ethan, I said, my voice as quiet as the winter. Whine through the concrete yard. It's in your head. I pushed the door shut, turned the lock, and walked back to my desk. 3 years later, the waterfront park had officially opened to the public. It was a beautiful, crisp autumn afternoon. The leaves on the maple trees had turned a brilliant golden red, falling slowly like dry paper onto the wet concrete of the pathway. I sat on a wooden bench halfway down the main trail, a cup of hot tea in my hand. Beside me on the bench lay a brand new, clean leather sketchbook. On the first page was a simple, elegant drawing of the river, the water wide, endless, and completely free of the shadows of the past. A tall, quiet man with dark hair and a green backpack walked up the path, holding a fresh batch of warm cinnamon rolls in a paper bag. He had a pencil tucked behind his ear, his fingers carrying a faint trace of charcoal dust from our latest design review. It was Marcus, our firm's senior structural engineer, the man who had worked beside me for 2 years, holding the flashlight during our late-night site surveys, making sure I never had to walk 3 steps behind him. The wind is picking up, Avery, Marcus said, sitting down beside me and pulling a wool blanket over our knees. Are you cold? I looked down at the sketch, then at the golden maples, and finally at his warm, genuine smile. No, I said, leaning his head against his shoulder. I'm very warm. Across the river, the high-rise towers of the east side were starting to glow with the first yellow lights of the evening. But I didn't look at them. I closed my sketchbook, took a sip of my warm tea, and let the clean, cold wind off the water carry the last dry leaves of the past away into the endlessly beautiful horizon ahead.